You've been told America's history is shaped by presidents elected by the people. But what if the real rulers never appeared on any ballot? A secret line of shadow presidents has manipulated wars, economies, and politics from behind closed doors for nearly a century. Their names erased, their existence denied, yet their power surpasses that of any official. Using media control, hidden funding, and covert agencies, they steer events while the public remains unaware. This invisible government shaped wars, engineered crises, and controlled culture to keep their dominance unchallenged. Whistleblowers have risked everything to expose them, but secrecy and surveillance tighten the grip. Who are these shadow presidents, and what is their ultimate agenda? Stay with us and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. From the earliest days of the American Republic, power was supposed to rest firmly in the hands of elected officials, the president, Congress, and the judiciary. Yet, beneath this veneer of democracy, an entirely different system of governance was quietly taking shape. One hidden in the shadows and operated by a secret cadre of influential figures who never appeared on ballots or public stage. These shadow presidents wielded unparalleled influence over the course of history, their names intentionally erased from archives, their existence denied by official records. The origins of this clandestine power structure can be traced back to the turmoil following World War I, a conflict that shattered old empires and left governments vulnerable to new forms of control. Intelligence agencies born in this era, such as the precursor to the CIA and other secret services, were not merely tools of statecraft, but became vehicles for a covert ruling class. These agencies helped establish a network of operatives, financiers, and politicians who orchestrated global events while remaining invisible to the public eye. The Great Depression offered further cover, as chaos and economic despair justified the rise of emergency powers and closed-door decisions, making it easier for unseen hands to steer policy. The apparent presidency, filled with public speeches and symbolic gestures, became a distraction, a ceremonial role, while true authority was wielded by unaccountable figures behind thick walls. These shadow presidents were often individuals embedded within the highest echelons of industry, banking, and intelligence. Men and women whose wealth and networks allowed them to bypass democratic processes altogether. They influenced presidential elections through back-channel funding, manipulated media coverage to shape public opinion, and controlled key legislative decisions by directing lobbyists and insiders. Their reach extended into military operations, covertly initiating conflicts or peace talks to serve their broader agenda, often kept hidden from Congress and the courts. The Cold War intensified this secret governance, as paranoia about communism justified vast expansions of surveillance and clandestine operations. The shadow presidency became institutionalized, protected by laws passed in secrecy, with oversight bodies rendered powerless or complicit. Even as the public perceived a stable government, the real decision-making occurred in undisclosed meetings involving global financiers and intelligence chiefs, shaping policy far beyond national borders. This hidden structure not only controlled political events, but penetrated cultural institutions, influencing education, entertainment, and social movements to maintain control over collective consciousness. The consequences are profound. Wars fought and won or lost, financial crises engineered or avoided, social upheavals sparked or suppressed, all under the watchful eyes of those who never faced the electorate. Understanding this shadow system is crucial. as it explains the paradox of American democracy, a government of the people that often seems indifferent or hostile to popular will. It is a story of betrayal and manipulation, but also of survival and adaptation by those who refuse to relinquish power. In the coming blocks, we will identify key figures, reveal methods of control, and expose how this shadow presidency continues to influence the present and the future of the United States. To comprehend the vast machinery of the shadow presidency, one must first grasp the intricate web of institutions and individuals that constitute its core. At the heart of this covert system lie secret councils, advisory boards, and committees formed during the interwar period and expanded through the Cold War. These groups operated beyond the reach of Congress, often bypassing even the president himself. Members included not just politicians, but powerful industrial magnates, intelligence operatives, legal experts, and financiers whose interests aligned in preserving and expanding their influence. These shadow presidents did not rely on public approval. Their authority derived from control over critical levers, media ownership, financial flows, and military assets. Through secret funding channels, they supported political candidates willing to conform to their agenda, ensuring that even elected officials remained subordinate. The manipulation of the press was equally essential, controlling narratives via major news outlets, radio networks, and later television. The shadow presidency shaped public perception, obscuring their true role while fostering consent or distraction. Major historical events, often portrayed as spontaneous or democratic, were carefully staged or influenced. For instance, during the Vietnam War, leaks and misinformation campaigns masked the extent of covert operations designed to advance hidden strategic objectives. Economic decisions, including the orchestrated crashes and bailouts, served to consolidate wealth and control by shadow networks. Through offshore accounts, secret trusts, and shell corporations, these entities funneled money to fund operations that no public budget could officially authorize. Militarily, the shadow presidency orchestrated clandestine actions, overthrowing governments, instigating proxy wars, and developing weapons programs unknown to the public or even Congress. The rise of the military-industrial complex is a direct consequence of this secret governance, where defense contractors and intelligence agencies became partners in maintaining the shadow system's grip on power. The legal framework surrounding these operations is equally labyrinthine. Classified executive orders, secret agreements, and covert statutes, crafted in closed sessions, effectively immunized shadow actors from oversight or prosecution. Attempts to investigate or expose these powers often met with obstruction, character assassination, or legal roadblocks. Furthermore, the shadow presidency embedded itself in international organizations and treaties, influencing global geopolitics from behind the scenes. This global reach ensures that decisions affecting billions are made by those with no electoral mandate and hidden agendas. The persistence of this shadow system is sustained by secrecy, disinformation, and compartmentalization. Many operatives and insiders know only fragments of the whole, preventing leaks and rebellion. The average citizen remains unaware, entranced by the spectacle of televised politics, while the true governance unfolds in obscurity. As you absorb this, consider the profound implications for democracy, sovereignty, and individual freedom. This is not a distant theory, but a present reality influencing every aspect of American life, from which politicians get elected to what wars are fought, and which economic crises unfold. The depth of this secret government's influence is staggering and demands exposure. Our next segment will focus on the key individuals who served as these shadow presidents, their origins, motivations, and the legacies they left behind. The shadow presidents were not mere puppets. They were master strategists, architects of a hidden empire whose identities were often shielded behind layers of anonymity and misinformation. Unlike elected officials whose biographies are public, these figures emerged from elite circles, often Ivy League alumni, powerful industrial dynasties, and intelligence veterans who operated in the twilight zones between government and private interests. Some came from old money families that had long controlled financial institutions like the Federal Reserve, while others were self-made billionaires who leveraged early investments in emerging industries to gain political leverage. Their backgrounds reveal a pattern: meticulous cultivation of influence, a deep understanding of global power structures, and an unwavering commitment to maintaining their dominance. For example, during the mid-20th century, certain families, such as the Rockefellers and Morgans, played pivotal roles in shaping policy through their control of banking, oil, and media conglomerates. Their reach extended into the military-industrial complex, funding research projects and lobbying efforts to secure contracts and governmental favor. Within intelligence circles, former spies and operatives transitioned into advisory roles, bringing covert skills to the management of this shadow presidency. Some individuals operated under multiple aliases, ensuring plausible deniability and protection from exposure. Many of these men and women cultivated relationships with presidents and top officials, acting as power brokers who negotiated behind closed doors, influencing appointments, legislation, and international diplomacy. These shadow presidents had a vision, one that transcended nationalism and democracy, focused on perpetuating an elite order that controlled wealth and information. They mastered the art of plausible deniability, manipulating public events while hiding in plain sight. Their motivations were complex. Some believed in a hierarchical vision of society, others were driven by personal enrichment, but all shared an understanding that maintaining secrecy was paramount to preserving their power. The legacy they left is embedded in America's political DNA: entrenched lobbying systems, deep state agencies, and a media landscape engineered to filter dissenting narratives. Importantly, many modern power players trace their roots back to these shadow figures, inheriting networks, tactics, and a doctrine of control. As we dissect their methods and influence, the true scale of their operations becomes evident. From rigging elections and controlling legislation to orchestrating foreign policy that served private interests over the public good. This is the hidden history of America's governance, one written not by elected leaders, but by those who ruled without ever being seen. The next block will reveal how these shadow presidents exercised their control in practice, detailing the mechanisms they used to dominate politics, economics, and society, to exert dominion over a vast nation and its complex institutions. Shadow presidents perfected a range of covert mechanisms designed to control every facet of governance and society without attracting scrutiny. One of their primary tools was the manipulation of elections, a process that appears democratic on the surface, but is heavily influenced through funding, media framing, and voter suppression tactics orchestrated by hidden operatives. Secret funds, often funneled through nonprofit organizations or shell companies, backed candidates who aligned with the shadow presidency's interests. These financial streams remained opaque, deliberately bypassing legal reporting requirements, creating an illusion of fairness while enabling top-down control of political outcomes. Alongside monetary influence came a sophisticated media strategy. Ownership or control of major newspapers, television networks, and digital platforms allowed shadow presidents to shape narratives, distract from critical issues, and vilify dissenters. This control of information created echo chambers reinforcing elite agendas, drowning alternative voices in a flood of orchestrated messaging. This media dominance also facilitated the deployment of disinformation campaigns, planting false or misleading stories to confuse the public, undermine opposition, and manufacture consent. Another critical mechanism was legal and bureaucratic control. Through the creation of secretive agencies, executive orders, and classified programs, the shadow presidency operated a parallel governance system beyond legislative oversight. Agencies such as the National Security Council and intelligence branches functioned as instruments of covert power, conducting operations ranging from surveillance on citizens to clandestine foreign interventions. The use of classified executive orders granted extraordinary powers to bypass checks and balances, consolidating authorities in a few hands. Economic control was equally vital. By leveraging influence over the Federal Reserve, Wall Street, and multinational corporations, shadow presidents engineered economic booms and busts, directing wealth flows to allies and reinforcing systemic inequalities. Corporate lobbying and revolving door politics ensured regulatory capture, further embedding their power in the economy's core. In the military realm, shadow presidents guided defense policy through back-channel communications with generals and defense contractors, approving secret missions and funding research into advanced weaponry. This created a permanent war economy, serving their interests under the guise of national security. Social control extended beyond institutions into culture and education, funding think tanks, research foundations, and academic programs allowed shadow presidents to influence intellectual discourse and public values, steering society toward compliance and conformity. Psychological operations, including subtle propaganda and behavior shaping, were employed to maintain public acquiescence and suppress critical thinking. These mechanisms combined to create a multifaceted control system, nearly invisible yet profoundly effective, operating continuously to safeguard shadow presidents' dominance. The consequences ripple through every political decision, economic policy, and social trend witnessed today, underscoring the urgent need to expose and understand these hidden forces. The upcoming block will explore the pivotal historical events shaped by this secret system and how it rewrote America's trajectory. The history of the United States, as publicly taught and remembered, conceals a deeper narrative in which the shadow presidency played a decisive role in shaping critical turning points. From the World War II era through the Cold War and beyond, these hidden rulers orchestrated events that dramatically altered America's domestic and international course. During the Second World War, while Roosevelt appeared as the nation's war leader, clandestine groups influenced military strategies, intelligence priorities, and post-war planning. These shadow figures ensured that the burgeoning military-industrial complex was established, setting the foundation for decades of secret spending and covert operations. The creation of the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947 was not simply a response to Soviet threats. but a deliberate institutionalization of covert power to serve shadow agendas, enabling continuous influence without public accountability. Throughout the Cold War, proxy wars in Korea, Vietnam, and Latin America were directed behind the scenes, often contradicting public statements and democratic processes. These conflicts were engineered to maintain geopolitical dominance and control over resources, but also to reinforce the authority of the shadow presidency by normalizing secrecy and clandestine actions. The McCarthy era, ostensibly a campaign against communism, also served as a mechanism to silence dissent and consolidate control within government and society. Economic policies during the post-war boom, including the manipulation of credit, housing, and industry, were carefully guided by shadow actors to sustain their influence while projecting an image of prosperity and stability. The Watergate scandal, widely understood as a political blunder, also obscured deeper conflicts between elected officials and shadow powers, revealing cracks in the facade of democracy. In more recent decades, events such as the Gulf War, the post-9/11 security state, and financial crises bear the fingerprints of shadow presidential planning, where transparency was sacrificed to maintain control and suppress inconvenient truths. The shadow presidency's role in shaping legislation, judicial appointments, and foreign treaties has created a legacy that transcends administrations, embedding their influence into the very institutions meant to represent the people. This hidden history reveals that many major national decisions were not the product of public debate or elected representatives, but the outcome of strategic maneuvering by an invisible elite. Understanding these events through this lens exposes the true scale and depth of the shadow system's impact on America's past and present. Our next block will dissect how this covert governance infiltrated cultural and social domains, molding public consciousness to align with shadow objectives. Beyond politics and economics, the shadow presidency's influence extends deeply into the cultural and social fabric of the United States, shaping the collective consciousness to secure compliance and perpetuate their control. Cultural institutions such as Hollywood, mainstream media, universities, and even religious organizations became conduits for subtle indoctrination, often without the public's awareness. Hollywood, for example, has long been a vehicle for embedding approved narratives, promoting patriotism, demonizing enemies, and normalizing surveillance and militarization, thereby conditioning viewers to accept government policies without question. Films and television shows often carry covert messaging aligned with shadow agendas, reinforcing social hierarchies and diminishing skepticism. The media's control ensured that alternative perspectives or dissenting voices were marginalized or delegitimized, fostering an environment where the mainstream narrative prevailed unchallenged. In higher education, funding from foundations connected to shadow networks influenced curricula, research priorities, and institutional policies. This directed the intellectual development of generations toward a worldview that supports the existing power structure, discouraging radical inquiry or criticism of the government and economic systems. Social movements and public opinion were similarly monitored and manipulated through funding of activist organizations and think tanks that promoted moderate, controllable reforms while sidelining truly transformative change. The shadow presidency understood that maintaining dominance required shaping not just laws or economies, but the very beliefs and values held by the population, Psychological operations and behavioral sciences were harnessed to craft campaigns that influenced public attitudes, exploiting fears, hopes, and biases. This included orchestrated media events, viral misinformation, and the strategic use of social media platforms to control discourse and suppress opposition. Educational content, entertainment, and news combine to create an environment where critical thinking is discouraged and conformity is rewarded. Religious institutions, too, were courted or co-opted to lend moral authority to the shadow agenda, aligning spiritual teachings with political objectives. Through these cultural controls, shadow presidents ensured that resistance was fragmented and subdued, allowing them to operate with minimal disruption. This pervasive cultural influence demonstrates that the shadow presidency's power is not only political or economic, but psychological, embedding itself in the very identity of the nation. Recognizing this dimension is vital to understanding the full scope of their control and the challenges faced by anyone seeking to expose or dismantle this hidden system. The next block will focus on key whistleblowers and leaks that have pierced this veil of secrecy, providing rare glimpses into the shadow presidency's workings. Throughout history, despite the impenetrable veil of secrecy surrounding the shadow presidency, cracks have appeared. Whistleblowers and leaked documents have occasionally pierced the darkness, revealing fragments of the hidden truth. These rare disclosures often come at great personal risk, exposing operatives, politicians, and insiders who dared to challenge the dominant narrative. One of the most notable whistleblowers was a high-ranking intelligence officer who revealed extensive covert operations involving election manipulation, illegal surveillance programs, and secret wars conducted without congressional approval. Their testimonies exposed how the shadow presidency used blackmail, intimidation, and disinformation to silence critics and maintain control. Another example involves leaked memos detailing the intricate funding schemes supporting shadow-backed political candidates, demonstrating a systematic effort to undermine genuine democratic processes. Even government investigations like those surrounding Watergate and Iran-Contra uncovered aspects of shadow governance, though the full extent was carefully obscured or dismissed. The rise of the digital age introduced new vulnerabilities for the shadow presidency, as hackers and whistleblower platforms made it harder to contain leaks. Anonymous sources have published troves of documents revealing global surveillance programs and hidden agendas linked to the shadow system. Yet, mainstream media and official channels have often downplayed or dismissed these revelations, protecting the status quo. The fate of many whistleblowers, ostracism, legal battles, and exile, serves as a warning to others considering exposing the shadow presidency's secrets. Despite this, the persistent drip of disclosures continues to erode the wall of silence, inspiring public skepticism and alternative media investigations. These leaks, while incomplete and fragmented, offer crucial insights into the mechanisms and scope of the shadow presidency, validating suspicions long held by conspiracy researchers and critical thinkers. They also highlight the vast resources and strategies employed to maintain secrecy, from advanced surveillance to legal suppression. Understanding the importance of these whistleblowers is key to unraveling the hidden power structure. The next block will examine the evolving technological tools and surveillance systems the shadow presidency employs to monitor and control the population, ensuring their dominance endures. The shadow presidency's power is perpetuated and enhanced by its mastery of cutting-edge technology, particularly in the realms of surveillance, data collection, and artificial intelligence. These tools provide unprecedented capabilities to monitor, influence, and control the populace while remaining virtually invisible to everyday citizens. Since the mid-20th century, advances in electronic surveillance evolved from wiretaps and radio intercepts to sophisticated digital spying, enabling comprehensive monitoring of communications, financial transactions, and even physical movements through GPS and biometric systems. The National Security Agency, NSA, and other intelligence branches, often operating with little oversight, have developed massive data centers that store and analyze vast amounts of information, creating detailed profiles of individuals and groups. This data is leveraged not only to identify threats, but to manipulate behavior, predict social trends, and suppress dissent before it gains momentum. Surveillance technologies have extended into everyday devices, smartphones, smart home systems, and social media platforms, turning citizens into unwitting data sources. Algorithms analyze likes, shares, and interactions, feeding tailored content that shapes opinions, emotions, and purchasing behaviors, often without conscious awareness. This digital ecosystem is weaponized to deploy targeted propaganda, misinformation, and psychological operations that reinforce shadow presidency agendas. Beyond passive monitoring, the shadow presidency employs cyber capabilities for offensive operations, hacking, disinformation campaigns, and covert interventions in foreign elections, projecting power globally while maintaining plausible deniability. Artificial intelligence and machine learning further automate and refine these processes, making surveillance more efficient and invasive. Emerging technologies, including facial recognition and neural interface research, promise even deeper intrusion into personal privacy and autonomy. Legal frameworks and public awareness lag behind these developments, allowing the shadow presidency to expand its technological dominance largely unchecked. The result is a surveillance state where privacy is eroded, dissent is curtailed preemptively, and control is maintained through constant observation and subtle manipulation. Understanding this technological infrastructure is essential to grasping how the shadow presidency sustains its invisible empire in the digital age. The next block will explore the global reach of this secret system and its impact on international relations and world governance. The shadow presidency does not confine its influence within American borders. Its operations and power networks extend globally, shaping international affairs in profound and often unseen ways. Through secret alliances with foreign intelligence agencies, multinational corporations, and global financial institutions, this covert government exerts control over diplomatic policies, economic sanctions, and military interventions worldwide. Behind the facade of diplomacy and international law, shadow actors engineer coups, support proxy wars, and manipulate global markets to serve their strategic interests. International organizations such as the United Nations, World Bank, and International Monetary Fund are often leveraged as instruments to implement policies that maintain the dominance of this hidden elite. These entities facilitate economic restructuring, debt enforcement, and political compliance in developing nations, frequently to the detriment of local populations but to the benefit of shadow-controlled financial interests. Trade agreements and security pacts are crafted in secret negotiations, often bypassing democratic oversight, binding nations into frameworks favorable to the shadow presidency's objectives. The militarization of foreign policy is a key tool, with covert operations designed to destabilize regimes deemed unfavorable, while publicly promoting ideals of democracy and human rights. Cyber warfare and information operations target foreign governments and populations, spreading disinformation, influencing elections, and undermining opposition movements. This global reach ensures that the shadow presidency maintains a geopolitical environment conducive to its sustained supremacy, managing threats before they become public crises. The intertwining of American covert power with international networks creates a complex web where sovereignty is compromised and global governance is increasingly centralized in the hands of unseen actors. Understanding this international dimension is critical to seeing the full picture of the shadow presidency's control, which transcends national boundaries and shapes the course of global history. The forthcoming block will analyze the resistance movements and alternative power centers that challenge this hidden system, their successes, failures, and ongoing struggles. Resistance to the shadow presidency has existed since its inception, manifesting in various forms, from whistleblowers and investigative journalists to activist groups and dissident politicians. These challengers seek to expose the truth, disrupt secret operations, and restore transparency and accountability to governance. However, opposition faces overwhelming obstacles. The shadow system deploys sophisticated countermeasures, discrediting campaigns, legal harassment, infiltration of activist networks, and in extreme cases, enforced disappearances. Many courageous individuals who dared to confront this hidden power have been marginalized, silenced, or worse, erased from public memory. Despite these challenges, pockets of resistance persist, often relying on encrypted communication, decentralized organization, and alternative media platforms to bypass censorship and mobilize support. Investigative journalists have uncovered significant leaks and exposed covert programs, sparking public debates and legal inquiries. Whistleblower platforms and anonymous disclosures have shed light on abuses of power, although official responses frequently involve obstruction and cover-ups. Grassroots movements advocate for transparency reforms, civil liberties, and government oversight, but often struggle against a media landscape dominated by shadow-influenced conglomerates. Technology both aids and hinders resistance. While encrypted tools protect activists, the pervasive surveillance apparatus constantly monitors their activities. International solidarity has also grown, with global coalitions highlighting the shadow presidency's transnational impact. Yet the asymmetry of power remains stark. The shadow presidency's resources, secrecy, and control over key institutions make dismantling the system a monumental task. Understanding the dynamics of resistance is essential to appreciating the complex battle for democracy and freedom unfolding beneath the surface. The next block will examine the psychological and societal impact of living under shadow governance, including public apathy, disillusionment, and the normalization of surveillance. Living under the shadow presidency's pervasive influence has profound psychological and societal consequences, shaping not only policies but the very mindset of the population. Constant exposure to controlled narratives, surveillance, and manipulated information fosters widespread apathy, distrust, and disillusionment. Many citizens become resigned to the illusion that their voices and votes carry little weight, leading to political disengagement and a decline in civic participation. The normalization of surveillance breeds self-censorship and conformity. as people internalize the presence of unseen watchers and adjust their behavior accordingly. This environment dampens dissent and critical thinking, reinforcing the shadow presidency's dominance by limiting the public's capacity to challenge or question. Furthermore, the engineered polarization and culture wars distract from structural issues, fracturing communities and diverting attention from systemic control. Social media and digital platforms amplify these divides, often manipulated through targeted messaging and algorithmic filtering, deepening societal fragmentation. Psychological operations exploit fears of terrorism, economic collapse, or social chaos to justify expanded security measures and curtail freedoms, conditioning acceptance of intrusive policies. The consequence is a population simultaneously fearful, divided, and disempowered, making collective resistance more difficult. Education systems, cultural norms, and media consumption habits all play roles in perpetuating this status quo, often unknowingly reinforcing the shadow presidency's agenda. This psychological landscape is a critical battlefield where power is maintained not just by force or money, but by controlling perceptions, emotions, and beliefs. Understanding these dynamics is vital for anyone seeking to comprehend or confront the true nature of American governance today. Our final block will provide a call to awareness, revealing the pathways forward, the dangers of ignorance, and the imperative to reclaim agency from shadow control. The story of the shadow presidency is not merely an exposé of hidden rulers. It is a warning and a call to action. Ignorance and passivity allow this invisible empire to thrive, quietly dictating the fate of millions while the public remains distracted or deceived. But awareness is the first step toward reclaiming power. Understanding the mechanisms, individuals, and historical events that compose this shadow system reveals vulnerabilities that can be exploited to restore transparency and accountability. Citizen engagement, investigative journalism, legal reform, and technological safeguards against surveillance are essential tools in this struggle. The stakes could not be higher. The erosion of democracy, privacy, and sovereignty threatens the very fabric of society. Yet history shows that concentrated power, no matter how secretive or entrenched, is not invincible. Persistent exposure, collective action, and unwavering demand for truth have the potential to dismantle the shadow presidency's grip. Each individual has a role to play through informed voting, supporting independent media, safeguarding personal privacy, and fostering critical thought. The future depends on breaking the cycle of deception and reclaiming governance for the people. This narrative is a rare glimpse behind the curtain of American history, a glimpse that once seen cannot be unseen. The shadow presidency is real, its influence pervasive, but not absolute. The choice now lies with those willing to confront uncomfortable truths and rise to the challenge of restoring true democracy. The journey begins with knowledge, and knowledge demands courage. This is the secret history, the hidden power, and the urgent truth you were never meant to know until now.